They lit the candles like nothing was wrong. Sophie's birthday cake sat in the middle of my old dining table, the same one Harold and I built together when we moved into this house 4 decades ago. The frosting read Happy 8th, sweetheart, but the room didn't feel sweet. It felt staged, off. Denise was all smiles, flitting around with plates and paper napkins. My son Adam raised his glass like a toastmaster at a fake wedding. They barely looked my way. I sat at the end of the table, Ellen's spot, back when she visited, feeling like a decoration, something forgotten. The scent of cold apple pie lingered like a ghost. I watched the wax drip from Sophie's candles as she leaned forward to blow them out. Then, she turned to me. "Grandma," she whispered, tugging at my sleeve. Her voice trembled. "Tonight they're going to take everything." I blinked. "What did you say, darling?" She glanced at her parents, then back at me. "Mom called a lawyer. Dad said they had to get it done before midnight. They want you to sign papers." My fork slipped from my hand. It clanged on the plate. Denise looked over. "Everything all right, Maureen?" she asked sweetly. I smiled like I didn't just feel my stomach cave in. Just clumsy old hands. But my mind raced. "Sign what? Tonight?" And they told Sophie. She nodded, eyes wide. "I heard them last night in the hallway." Daddy said, "We'll handle her after cake." They called it handling me. I looked around the room. Balloons bobbed by the ceiling. Sophie's crayon drawings hung like decorations. But the warmth I once knew here had vanished. Harold used to fill this place with humming and hammering. Now all I heard was the scraping of knives and the whisper of betrayal. Adam raised his glass. "To Sophie and to family." "Family." Denise chimed in. "After cake, we'd love to chat with you, Maureen. Just a few simple things. Some signatures." My hands curled under the table. I forced a chuckle. "Of course. Dear." They thought I was forgetful. Thought softness meant surrender. I felt Harold in that moment. Felt him behind me, holding my hand like he used to in courtrooms, whispering, "Don't you let anyone take what you bled to build." Sophie slipped a crayon drawing into my lap. Me and her, standing in front of the house. No one else. "My legacy?" I patted her head. "Thank you, sweetheart, that's beautiful." She smiled, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Adam clapped twice. "Mom, why don't you come to the den after cake? We'll make it quick." Quick, like wiping a hard drive, like selling a deed. I nodded slow. Let them think I was tired. Let them believe I was slipping. But I built this house. I raised that boy, and I wasn't about to sign away my life for a slice of cake and a poisoned smile. Let the party finish. Let the candles burn low. Tonight, they wouldn't see me coming. The house didn't always feel like this. There was a time when warmth didn't come from a thermostat, but from Harold's laugh echoing through the kitchen as he flipped pancakes on Sunday mornings. I used to wake up to the smell of maple syrup and the sizzle of butter, the hum of his off-key singing drifting up the stairs. Back then, our mornings were slow and wide open. We'd sit at this same table, before the corners chipped and the varnish dulled, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs. He'd run his thumb over my wrist like it was still our first week of marriage. We didn't have much, but we built everything from scratch. Including Adam. Adam was a sweet boy once, quiet, gentle. He used to bring home crayon drawings of us 3 holding hands. One time, he hid under the dining table because he didn't want his picture of the house to get wet in the rain. Said it was a perfect house. I remember Harold kneeling down beside him, promising, "Your mama made this place perfect. We're just lucky to live in it." There were winters when the pipes froze, and Harold would come in with his coat soaked through and his knuckles red. I'd wrap him in a quilt boil tea and he'd say, "If the roof holds and you're here, I'm rich." Those words used to be enough. But things change. The warmth faded when Harold got sick. Slowly at first, a missed note, a lost tool, a fall on the porch steps. Adam had just started college, and I didn't want to worry him. I took care of Harold alone. I kept working as a school secretary by day and watched over him at night. Even after Harold passed, I stayed. I couldn't leave this house. Every beam held his laughter. Every creak in the floor was his memory. Adam visited less. His life became loud, big car, sharp suits, Denise. She never liked the house. Too drafty, too small to me. When they moved in next door after Sophie was born, I thought it was a blessing. It wasn't. The holidays shrank. Thanksgiving used to mean 12 people folding chairs, and Harold's terrible stuffing. Now it meant one tray of reheated mashed potatoes and a polite 20-minute visit. Sometimes, when I'd offer to help with something, watch Sophie, sew curtains, fix the screen door, Denise would smile that thin smile and say, "Oh, Maureen, maybe it's time to let the younger folks handle things?" And just like that, I was no longer useful. I still baked, still set the table, still waited for someone to need me. Tonight reminded me too much of those early grief years, except this time, the ache wasn't for Harold. It was for the life I thought I'd preserved, the family I thought I mattered to. The room was quiet now. The guests had left. Crumbs trailed across the floor. A balloon popped somewhere in the hallway. I stood at the hallway closet and opened the small lockbox I hadn't touched in years. Inside was Harold's old pocket knife, the one he used to carve initials into the oak swing-out back. He always kept it sharpened, oiled. Just in case, I turned it over in my palm, smooth heavy. On the blade, faintly etched Clutch 1973. I sank into the armchair by the window, the pocket knife still in my hand. Outside, the swing swayed with the wind, no one on it. Just memory. Sophie tiptoed into the room. Her hair was mussed, pajamas too big. "Grandma," she whispered.
"Are you okay?"
I nodded, just thinking. She sat beside me, head on my shoulder. I could feel her breath, soft and warm. Will they really take everything? My throat tightened. "Not if I can help it," I said. "Not without a fight," she nodded. Like she understood, like she had lived an entire lifetime already. I tucked the knife back in its box and closed the lid. Slowly, carefully, tomorrow I would call someone. Tonight, I let the memory of Harold's voice echo through me, steady as ever. Don't let them mistake your silence for surrender. The next morning, I made French toast, 3 plates, maple syrup in the warmer, cinnamon sprinkled just like Sophie liked it. I laid the table slowly, deliberately, napkins folded, forks aligned. My hands knew the rhythm even when my heart didn't. Denise walked in first, still in her robe, scrolling through her phone. "Oh, how domestic," she said, blinking at the spread. Adam followed, hair damp from the shower, tie already loosened like he couldn't bother with pretending anymore. Sophie trailed in quietly. She smiled when she saw the table. At least someone still did. We sat. I poured the orange juice. The toast steamed. For a few minutes, there was quiet chewing and butter spreading, almost like a real family. Then Denise tilted her head, smirking. "You know Maureen," she said, stabbing a strawberry. "I saw a brochure yesterday for a beautiful retirement place out near Willow Creek. Views, yoga, little garden plots. You'd fit right in?" I looked up slowly. She sipped her juice. "Just thinking out loud." "I mean, how long do you want to keep up with all this?" Adam didn't blink. "Denise," he said mildly, "come on." She waved her fork. "I'm not being rude, I'm being realistic. Houses age, people age. Sophie needs space. We all do." The room shrank. I kept my face still. I cut my toast into perfect squares. The smell of cinnamon turned sour. "The house is fine," I said. Denise laughed lightly. "For now. But say there was a fall. Or confusion. I mean, what if you signed something you didn't mean to?" She turned to Sophie. "We just want Grandma safe, right?" Sophie blinked. She looked at me, then at her mother. She didn't answer. "Nobody's falling," I said. Adam finally joined in. "Look, let's not make this a thing. It was just a suggestion like a knife pressed gently to skin. Not cutting. Yet. I put my fork down. "I appreciate your concern," I said. "But I built this home, with Harold. And it's not going anywhere." Denise raised an eyebrow. "You built it." I nodded. Wet poured the foundation together. Every beam, every nail, every window frame. Harold did the framing. I handled the books, the permits, the roofing contracts. She smirked. "Well, I suppose that counts." Sophie's voice cut the air. "Mom, stop." Denise looked surprised. Sophie pushed her plate back. Her eyes were wide. "Grandma's house isn't old. It's cool. And I like it. And she's not confused." Adam cleared his throat. "Sophie, let's use respectful voices." But she was already up. She walked around the table and sat next to me, arms crossed. I reached over, brushing her hair behind her ear. My hands were still steady. Denise muttered, "So dramatic." I stood. "Thank you both for coming to breakfast," I said. "No, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." "Work?" Adam scoffed. "What kind of work?" I looked him in the eye. "The kind you don't get paid for," I said. "But still matters." I left my plate untouched. My appetite was gone. In the hallway, I heard Sophie follow. She didn't say anything, just slipped her hand in mine. In the garage, I opened the old filing cabinet. The metal squeaked. I flipped past Harold's old tax records, insurance, land survey. Then I found it, a certified copy of the deed. In my name. Only mine, not Adam's. Not theirs. I held it with both hands. My pulse didn't even quicken. I had known. But now I remembered. They think I'm forgetful. They think I'm alone. But I have memory. I have time. And I have Sophie. The sun hadn't fully settled behind the trees when Denise knocked on the sunroom door with a smile too bright for evening. "Hey, Maureen!" she chirped, holding a folder in one hand and a glass of iced tea in the other. Figured we could go over a few things while it's still light out. I closed the book on my lap. An old gardening manual I didn't need, but had been using as a shield since dinner. "Of course, what sort of things?" She handed me the tea first, then the folder. Inside were 3 pages. The first had IRS logos, but the formatting looked off. The second was a typed document with no letterhead, just a bunch of legal language. The third was blank. Denise sat across from me, crossed her legs, and folded her hands. Too neatly. "Adam and I just want to help out," she said. "You know, keep things simple. These are just authorization forms, housekeeping stuff. Just in case you ever need assistance handling anything official." "Handling?" I echoed. She smiled. "Yes. No pressure? You don't even have to read them now if it feels like a lot. We can breeze through tomorrow." I held up the first page. "Mind if I take a quick look?" Her smile twitched. I read slowly. The font didn't match typical IRS formatting, and there were typos. Residential responsibility authorization. That's not a real term. The second document mentioned property transfer rights tucked in the middle of a paragraph about financial guardianship. There it was. Slipped in like a comma. I turned back to the first page. "Did you print this yourself, Denise?" She waved a hand. No. A paralegal from Adam's firm helped out. It's all just boilerplate. Everyone does this when they get older. Older. I set the folder on my lap and smiled. "You're very thorough." She looked relieved. "It just makes sense to prepare. I mean, we're right next door. We can take care of things quickly if something happens." God forbid? The sun dipped lower. The room darkened, shadows stretching across the carpet like arms. Sophie wandered in, cradling her iPad. "Grandma, can I play a game on the porch?" "Sure, sweetheart." She sat on the bench by the window, quietly tapping the screen. Denise stood. "No rush on those forms," she said. "But maybe just look them over before the weekend. Makes everyone feel better." "Of course," I said. "Thanks for thinking of me." She smiled, stepped out, and closed the sunroom door behind her. Sophie looked up. "Grandma?" "Heem." "Why was Mom looking at your bank account earlier?" My body froze. "When?" "Before breakfast. She had your iPad and said she was checking weather, but then I saw numbers." "She didn't know I was watching." I breathed in slow. "Thank you for telling me." Sophie's voice was barely above a whisper. "Are they trying to take your money?" I took her hand. "They might be trying to take things that don't belong to them." She blinked. "But it's your house." "Yes," I said. "It still is." I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer where I kept my documents. My real documents. The deed was still there. So were the bank statements. I had everything. The next morning, I would make copies. Take them to someone I trusted. I set the folder Denise had given me back on the table, folded, untouched. Then I walked to the guest room where they were staying, knocked once, and said through the door, "We'll talk tomorrow." The silence behind the door was thick as syrup, and sweeter than any lie they just tried to feed me. It began with breakfast. For the first time in years, I came down to an empty kitchen. No coffee brewing. No Sophie humming while drawing cats on napkins. No Adam reading the news aloud like a newscaster. Just silence, and a sticky film on the counter. I stood there with the dish rag in my hand, not sure whether to wipe the counter or cry. Eventually, Denise appeared, already dressed in crisp linen pants and heels too sharp for morning. "Oh," she said. Feigning surprise, "Didn't Adam mention? We had breakfast early. Sophie has dance class now." "Trial session. Dance," I asked. "Since when?" She smiled, tight and controlled. "We thought it'd be good for her."
Busy kids, happy minds?
I looked around. No plate for me, no mug, not even a note. Later that day, I knocked on Sophie's door. It was slightly ajar, but Denise stepped into the hallway before I could enter. "Sophie's resting," she said quickly, "and she has homework after. Maybe give her some space today, Maureen. Big day for her." She didn't wait for me to answer. Just walked away, heels tapping like punctuation. By the time dinner came, I found a post-it on the fridge. "We grabbed takeout, be back late." "No love, Adam." "No, hope you ate." I sat alone at the dining table with a half-toasted sandwich. The lights overhead flickered slightly. I didn't bother fixing it. The silence in this house wasn't the peaceful kind anymore. It was loaded. Designed. I thought about calling Ruth from my church circle. But what would I say? My son and daughter-in-law are punishing me for not signing away my home. The words stuck in my throat like dry bread. By Wednesday, Denise had moved Sophie's clothes into the guest suite. She wanted a little change, she said, like I wouldn't notice. Adam barely spoke. He walked past me like I was wallpaper. When he did speak, it was curt. "Can you not use the living room for your puzzles? Sophie does Zoom lessons now." "You didn't say goodnight to her last night?" "She was tired." Tired, or told to stay away. I started walking early in the mornings, bundled in Harold's old jacket, just to feel real. I'd watch the neighbors raking leaves, sipping coffee, waving to dogs. Their lives looked untouched. Normal mine felt erased. On Friday night, I set the table anyway. 3 places, forks straight, glasses polished. I made meatloaf the way Adam used to beg for when he was 10. No one showed. Their car was gone. I ate 1 slice, then packed the rest away. Before bed, I checked the front door. It was locked from the inside. I hadn't locked it. They didn't want visitors. Or exits. I sat on the couch, fingers laced, Harold's photo in my lap. I whispered, "They're shutting me out!" In my own house. His smile stared back, forever fixed in time. Then I saw it, a small folded paper tucked under my crossword book. I opened it. "I still believe you." A smiley face drawn in crayon. Dotted with a heart. "Sophie." My lungs finally exhaled. My fingers gripped the note like it was scripture. They hadn't gotten to her. Not yet. They said it was. Just a little gathering. Denise had been bustling around the kitchen since noon, humming to herself and ordering wine deliveries. Adam spent the afternoon fiddling with the Bluetooth speakers, asking Sophie to test playlists. Nobody asked me to join, but I live here, so I cooked. I chopped cucumbers, arranged the charcuterie board, and ironed the cloth napkins they never used. "Thanks for the help, Maureen," Denise called out breezily as she opened another bottle of white wine. "Help." At 50:45, I went upstairs and changed. Pale blue silk blouse, navy skirt, simple pearl earrings Harold gave me for our 30th. I even curled the ends of my hair. Just a little. Just enough to remember I existed. When I came down, guests were already trickling in. Lauder? Colognes. Polished shoes stepping across the hardwood I refinished last spring. I smiled. Walked toward the kitchen to offer more wine. And Denise spotted me. "Oh," she said a little too loudly, waving her hand like swatting a bee. "Didn't expect you to dress up. We've got everything covered in here." Her voice was sugar. Her eyes were stone. A woman by the island. Blonde. Maybe Denise's coworker. Looked me up and down. "She helps out around the place," Denise added casually. "We're lucky she knows where everything is." I froze. I wasn't introduced. Not as Adam's mother. Not as Sophie's grandmother. Just convenient help. The blonde woman nodded politely and turned back to her wine. I placed the extra napkins on the counter. My hands didn't shake. My smile didn't falter. Not yet. Sophie peeked in from the hallway. Her eyes locked on mine. She mouthed, "Sorry." I gave her the gentlest smile I could manage. Then I stepped back. I watched them from the doorway. Glasses clinking. Denise laughing at things she barely understood. Adam shaking hands with a man who clearly thought himself important. And I stood in the hallway. Like wallpaper. Like a coat hook. Halfway through the party, I tried to take out more appetizers. Denise stopped me with a hand on my arm. "Really, Maureen? You don't have to linger. Why don't you relax upstairs? You've done plenty." So I did. I turned without a word and went back to my room. My heels echoed up the stairs. I didn't take them off. I sat at my desk, opened the drawer, pulled out a yellow notepad. At the top, I wrote things they've forgotten. Who paid the mortgage the first 15 years? Who sat in a hospital lobby while Harold fought for breath? Who cooked every Christmas from 1983-2017? Who let them move in rent? Free? Who let them think silence meant softness? I underlined the last one twice. Outside, I could still hear the laughter. Then a knock. Soft. Sophie pushed the door open, still in her party dress. "You looked pretty tonight," she said. I smiled. "So did you?" She walked in, barefoot now, and sat on the bed. "Why did Mommy say that stuff?"
I took a breath.
"Because some people forget the roots once they start building taller floors." She looked confused but nodded anyway.
I don't forget,
she said. She reached into her tiny purse and pulled out a folded square of paper. Inside was a drawing. Me in tonight's outfit, smiling, crown on my head. I laughed. Really laughed. "You're my queen," she said. I folded the drawing and slipped it into my top drawer. I kissed her forehead. "Run along before your mother notices." She didn't move. "Do you think she loves me?" I blinked. "Yes," I said carefully. "But not the way you deserve right now." She nodded. After she left, I returned to my notepad. Under the first list, I started another next steps. Contact Ruth, lawyer's sister, review deed again, check auto, pay settings on bank accounts, move valuables from bedroom, breathe by midnight. The laughter had died, and I had a plan. I had learned over 74 years of life that betrayal rarely shouts, it whispers. It edits your grocery list. It rewrites your will. It changes passwords when you're not looking. Tuesday morning, I brewed my own coffee, half calf, 2 sugars, and logged into my banking app from the upstairs desktop. At first, nothing looked amiss, but the homepage format had changed. My checking account was no longer labeled Maureen Ellis, primary. It simply said, Ellis household. No initials, no designation. My fingers hovered. I clicked through the tabs. Savings untouched, investment account still there, mortgage file archived, marked PID. But when I clicked the drop-down for account permissions, a new name flashed briefly before disappearing. Adam R. Ellis. I logged out, closed the tab. My hands were cold. That afternoon, while taking out the kitchen trash, I noticed something odd. A fresh stack of junk mail sat at the bottom of the bin, on top a wadded receipt. Under that, a sheet of paper folded once. Heavy, cream-colored stock. I tugged it out carefully, flattened it. It was a printout. Legal formatting title. Transfer of property and durable power of attorney. My name was typed neatly at the top, and beneath, a scrawled version of my signature, crooked, jagged. I never signed it. Not like that. I refolded the page, slipped it into my cardigan, said nothing. The next morning, I called the bank. Just routine? I said to the voice on the line. I'd like to review my estate files and verify beneficiaries. She scheduled me for 10:30 a.m. sharp. At the branch, I wore my best blazer. Navy with silver buttons. I looked like someone who hadn't forgotten anything. The young banker Madison smiled too wide. Let's get you set up, Miss Ellis. We sat in a side room, glass walls. Too much light. She pulled up my records. I leaned in. All primary accounts are under your name, she confirmed. Nothing has changed. But she hesitated. I waited. 2 weeks ago, a request was initiated to assign a co-signatory. It was flagged and paused because no in-person confirmation was completed. Who initiated it? She looked down. From a link device belonging to Mr. Adam Ellis. My son. I asked for a printed copy of the form. She complied. Any requests to change ownership on the house? I asked. She checked. Nothing successful. There was an inquiry. But again, incomplete. No authorization. Can I get that on paper too? Of course. As I slid the documents into my leather purse, I smiled. Thank you, Madison. You've been very helpful. I left the bank slowly. The wind picked up, tugging at my coat. On the sidewalk, I paused, closed my eyes. They tried, but they failed. And now I had proof. When I got home, Denise was in the garden trimming deadheads from flowers she hadn't planted. She looked up, surprised. "Errands?" she asked, voice casual. I smiled, just checking on things. She didn't ask what things. Because she already knew. The grandfather clock downstairs ticked with unnerving regularity, each second scraping against my nerves like sandpaper. I'd tried to sleep, twice. But my body, wiser than my pride, refused. It was 2:43 a.m. when I finally gave up. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and slipped my feet into Harold's old slippers. The left one still curved from the way he used to walk. I shuffled quietly into the kitchen, every floorboard seeming louder than usual. I didn't turn on the overhead lights, just the lamp over the sink. The house had that late night breathlessness, like it was holding something in. I opened the cupboard, pulled out the tea tin with the lavender blend Sophie used to call Grandma Clouds, and started the kettle. Waiting for water to boil at that hour felt almost spiritual. Everything slows down when you have nothing left to rush for. When the kettle clicked off, I poured and watched the steam rise, curling like tiny ghosts around my face. I wrapped both hands around the cup and stood in the dark. Back upstairs, I sat at my writing desk and pulled out the yellow notepad I'd started. The page still smelled faintly of graphite and lemon oil from the drawers. I stared at the last thing I'd written the night before. Diketia Farjik. I am not afraid, I am not alone, I still hold the keys. The pen in my hand felt heavy. I uncapped it and began again.
Touted it.
Isolate me from Sophie, forge my signature, alter my account settings, redefine my role in my own home, make me doubt my memory. Each stroke of the pen calmed me, more than tea ever could. The paper wasn't just a list, it was armor. I paused, listening. Somewhere downstairs, the fridge clicked. A soft metallic hum returned. Otherwise, silence. I reached into the folder from the bank and pulled out the documents Madison had printed. The typeface, the seals, these things were real. Concrete. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper, as if to ground myself in reality. They had tried to erase me. They had smiled while doing it. I let that thought linger. Let it sting. I stood and opened the fireproof lockbox beneath my bed. Inside Harold's will, our marriage certificate, Sophie's first school portrait, Ruth's last Christmas card. I added the new documents to the pile. I didn't cry, but I did sit for a long time on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Harold's voice echoed in my memory, not from a dramatic moment, but from one of our quieter ones. Don't let them confuse silence with surrender. Maureen. He'd said that after a church board meeting where I'd refused to vote with the crowd. I had told him I didn't raise my voice because I didn't want to embarrass anyone. He had taken my hand and said that line. I mouthed it now. Don't let them confuse silence with surrender. I returned to the desk and began writing again. Teodul. Call Ruth first thing, change passwords, lock file drawer, list all assets by name, pack backup copies. The words became a drumbeat. A quiet, steady march. Then I turned the page and started another list. Legacy wine. Trust for Sophie, document house history, organize Harold's medals and tools, update emergency contacts, leave notes. Not bitterness. I blinked away, the sting in my eyes. Bitterness. That was the real threat. That's what they wanted me to become. Bitter. Confused. Tired. But bitterness grows in silence. And tonight I was writing. At 4:10 a.m., I reheated the tea. When I returned, the hallway light flicked on faintly. A shadow shifted. Sophie? Barefoot hair mussed, clutching her little notebook like a shield.
You okay, sweetheart?
I asked softly. She nodded, but her eyes were puffy. Can't sleep? I patted the chair beside me. She came over and sat. Her legs dangled. What are you writing? She asked, peeking at the pages. Plans, I said. Plans for keeping what matters safe? Her voice lowered. Are we in trouble? I looked at her carefully. We're not, but we are going to be brave. She didn't answer right away. Then, I heard Mommy say you're getting forgetful. I took a breath. Sometimes people say things to make themselves feel right, even when they're wrong. She traced a circle on the desk. You remember everything. I smiled. I remember what counts. She leaned against me, her body warm, grounding. What are we gonna do? I looked at the notepad, then back at her. We're going to take back what's already mine, I said quietly. But we'll do it without yelling. Without hurting back, just with truth. Like a secret mission? She asked. Exactly like that, she beamed. I want to help. I kissed her hair. You already are. I walked her back to bed, tucked her in, and lingered at the door. The house didn't feel so quiet anymore.
Back at the desk?
I flipped the page and wrote one more line. This ends with dignity, not drama. And finally I slept. I waited until 9:02 a.m. before dialing Ruth's number, 2 minutes after opening hours. Just enough to not seem too eager, though I'd been staring at the clock since 7:48. She answered on the third ring. Maureen Ellis, she said, her voice calm, the same warmth I remembered from Harold's estate proceedings years ago. You're up early, she added. I'm up for good, I said. Silence, then a pause that held weight. Tell me everything. By 11 a.m., I sat across from her desk, surrounded by manila folders and the scent of peppermint drops she kept in an old glass jar. Some things didn't change, but I had. I want everything moved into a living trust, I said. My voice was steady. She didn't blink. The house? Yes. The accounts? All of them? Beneficiary? I took a deep breath, Sophie. At 25? But I keep control. No co-trustee? Ruth raised an eyebrow. No Adam? I shook my head. Especially not Adam. Her pen scratched softly against the page. No questions after that. As she drafted the necessary documents, I glanced out her window. The clouds were thin and stretched like pulled cotton. The sky beyond was the kind of pale blue that made your heart ache a little, though you couldn't say why. I'll also need to update my emergency contacts. I added, remove Adam. Replace with Sophie's future guardian. Ruth, can you help me note that? She nodded, flipping to a new form. We signed. Then signed again. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The pen was smooth. My hand didn't shake. By the time we finished, the folder on her desk had grown fat. You'll need to go to the bank again, she said, glancing over her glasses. And the county office if you want to expedite the title recording. I nodded. I've still got a few good steps left in me. Ruth smiled. That's not what I meant. I meant you're doing this right. That meant more than she knew. At the bank, the sun hit the windows hard. I saw myself in the glass. Silver hair swept back, navy coat buttoned high, purse clutched like a declaration. The teller recognized me.
Back again, Miss Ellis.
Just tying bows on loose ends, I said. They brought me to a glass, walled office. A young woman named Carla sat across from me. Her nails were neatly trimmed and her voice had that banker calm. Polite, efficient, rehearsed. But she looked me in the eye. We worked through everything together, changed passwords across all accounts. Disabled device access for any login but mine, removed Adam as an authorized emergency contact, reviewed safe deposit box permissions, verified no co-signatory rights remained. When she printed the final confirmation, I didn't sign immediately. I read each word, every line. The header read Maureen Ellis, sole authorized controller. I signed. Outside, the air felt warmer than I remembered. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I just noticed more now. The maple tree near the parking lot had already turned. Its leaves were a mess of gold and rust. I reached out and brushed one off the windshield before I opened the car. I sat behind the wheel a while, hands on leather gone soft from time. I thought about Harold's hands, how they used to rest right where mine were now. How many Saturdays he drove this same car to the hardware store. How he never needed GPS, just memory. Back at the house, the living room was too quiet. The clock above the mantel ticked a little too loud. Denise was folding throw blankets into tidy, meaningless squares. You've been out, she said without looking up. I hung my purse gently on the hook. Yes, she kept folding. Running errands. I nodded, moving slowly toward the hallway. Just putting things where they belong. She turned at that. Her face didn't ask, but her eyes did. I met her stare with even footing. Calm, not cold. Controlled, not caged. Then I walked upstairs. In my room, I laid the signed documents on the bedspread like a ceremony. They looked out of place next to the quilt I had stitched during Harold's chemo nights. But maybe they belonged more than anything else did now. I took out my notepad, flipped past the checklists. At the bottom of the next page, I wrote phase complete. No one can take what I've already guarded. I felt something inside me loosen, a knot I hadn't noticed pulling for months, the kind that doesn't strangle suddenly, but strangles slowly. I stood at the window. The lawn outside looked the same as it always had. Sophie's jump rope was still looped around the porch railing. The sun still lit the grass unevenly, half shadowed by the roof's overhang. But I saw it all differently now. I saw where my roots were. And I saw how far they'd grown beneath everything Adam and Denise had tried to cover. They thought silence meant surrender. But I had simply been waiting for the right day to speak. And today, I hadn't needed to raise my voice at all. The invitation arrived like an olive branch. Would love to have a nice dinner? Denise had said, just us. Clear the air. Talk about next steps. I smiled, nodded, agreed. But I knew. They weren't offering peace. They were setting the table for a power play. Friday evening, I dressed in navy, Harold's favorite color. Not for them, for me, for resolve. The fabric felt smooth and strong, like armor. I clasped a silver pendant around my neck, the one Sophie gave me for my last birthday. Legacy, it said in cursive. The dining room was set like it hadn't been in months. Candles flickered. Napkins folded just so. Denise had made her white lasagna, Adam's favorite, but she didn't ask what I liked. Sophie wasn't at the table. She's got homework, Adam said too quickly. Denise smiled, fake as powdered sugar. We just thought we'd talk finances. You know, as a family. I unfolded my napkin. Of course. They brought out a folder. Not leather, just plastic. Labeled in marker, state prep, inside a print illegal formatting. Familiar? Just formalities, Adam said. To help with taxes. Streamline things. I took the paper. Scanned it. It was a durable power of attorney, with my forged signature already at the bottom. Denise chirped, "You don't have to read sign. Just initial. Make it official." I folded the paper in half, neatly, deliberately. "Before we do that," I said, "I brought something too." From my purse, I pulled the folder Ruth had assembled. Inside the living trust, the verified deed, the banking confirmation forms. I laid them down like cards in a final hand. "What's this?" Adam asked. "Just some updates," I said, smiling. Denise reached for the papers. I tapped her hand.
No need?
"I'll walk you through." I started with the trust, how every asset had been moved. Then the house title, how it had been re-recorded with the county. The accounts, now locked with no co-access. Emergency contacts updated, I added. Legal rights realigned? Adam was blinking too much. Denise looked pale. "You've been busy," she muttered. "Not busy, just precise." Then I opened the forged document they had handed me. "This," I said, holding it up, "is criminal." Denise flushed. "It's just a draft," with a signature, mine, dated. In ink I never touched. They didn't speak. Then Sophie appeared. She stood in the doorway in her pajamas, notebook in hand. "Is everything okay?" I looked at her. "Yes, sweetheart. Everything's just getting clearer." She walked over, sat next to me. "Is this about the house?" she asked. Adam barked. "Go upstairs." "Sophie?" She didn't move. "She stays?" I said. Adam slammed his hand on the table. "This is still my house?" I leaned forward. "No, Adam, it isn't. It hasn't been for weeks. The deed is clear. The law is clear. And so am I." His voice cracked. "You're turning her against us." I shook my head. "You did that yourself." Denise stood. "You're being emotional?" I laughed. "I'm being legal." Silence. Then I stood. Certain. I gathered the documents, folded them, tucked them back into my purse. "I'm not leaving this house," I said. "You are." Sophie slipped her hand into mine, and that was the end of dinner. The next morning, the silence in the house felt like fresh air. Not the kind after a storm. The kind after you've quietly closed a door you should have shut long ago. I stepped into the kitchen and felt the difference. Not in the walls or the floorboards, but in my own body. The tension that used to collect in my shoulders every morning. Gone. The way I used to sip my tea like I was bracing for a question I didn't want to answer. That too. I stood in front of the window. The trees outside moved with the breeze, just enough to make the light dance across the counter. I watched it for longer than I meant to. Sophie came in quietly, dragging her slippers. Her hair was a mess of curls. She was holding the butter knife like a wand. "You slept in?" she said. "I did." "Good." She pulled out a chair and began smearing butter on toast. "You needed it." I didn't argue. She buttered her toast the same way Harold used it, all the way to the corners, like it mattered. We ate in silence. But it wasn't tense. It was full. By Sunday evening, they were gone. No confrontation. No apology. No yelling in the driveway. Just the sound of Denise zipping a suitcase. The faint scrape of Adam's voice carrying through a phone call in the guest room. Then the front door opening and closing. Twice, I watched them from the upstairs hallway, just long enough to see the trunk of their car close. And then I exhaled. There was no sense of triumph. Only stillness. The house, which had felt like a cage some mornings, now felt like my skin again. Familiar. Lived in. Mine. Later that afternoon, I dusted the top shelf of the bookcase. My hands moved slowly. I was surprised at how light they felt. Sophie was in the living room, building towers out of old shoe boxes. "I'm making a city," she explained. "What's it called?" "She Paulsville?" I smiled. "Population? Just us," she said. "But the buildings are tall." That night I lit a candle. Just one. It wasn't for them. It wasn't even for Harold. It was for the moment itself. For marking that we were still here. I walked from room to room. Not to inspect anything. Just to be inside each space again without shrinking. The guest room was still unmade. The drawers half closed. I left them that way. In the hallway, Harold's coat still hung on the hook. I touched the sleeve. The wool had faded a little more, soft with age. I didn't move it. The bedroom smelled faintly of the lavender sachets I'd tucked into the dresser years ago. They dried out, but they still held something. Like memory in fabric. The next morning, I made tea slower than usual. The steam curled up and touched my face. I closed my eyes and let it. Sophie came and wrapped in Harold's old flannel. The sleeves dangled past her hands. "I'm keeping this," she said.
"I'd like to see you try,"
I replied.
She grinned. "Maybe we can share it." We shared breakfast, too. She sliced the banana crooked and told me that crooked bananas tasted better. I believed her. We didn't mention her parents. We didn't need to. Tuesday, I sat down at Harold's desk. The drawers still stuck. The chair still creaked when I leaned. Everything was exactly the same. I pulled open the bottom drawer and found the envelope tucked beneath a stack of papers. My name was on it. Inside was a letter. Not for me, but for Sophie. Harold's handwriting was neat, curved slightly right, just like I remembered from grocery lists and anniversary cards. The letter was dated 10 years ago. He had written it when Sophie was just a toddler. He told her about kindness. About how people wouldn't always understand her calm. How silence wasn't something to be feared. How quiet people often see the most. He ended it with a line that made my hands shake. "You are the best part of who we've been. And who we'll become." I pressed the letter to my chest. Sat there for a long time. Then I reached for a fresh page. My hands were steadier now. "Dear Sophie," I wrote, "there will be people who underestimate you because you don't shout. Let them. Your voice will find its moment. When it does, speak with everything you know." I paused. The light outside had shifted. The breeze was blowing from the south now. I could smell the neighbors' tomato vines. Earthy. Familiar. I wrote more. Courage doesn't always look like standing up. Sometimes it looks like staying seated while everyone else runs. I thought of my mother. Of Harold. Of all the times I had swallowed things that didn't deserve silence. Of all the times I had finally spoken. I kept writing. 1 year later, the house had grown into itself again. The walls no longer strained with withheld words. The air didn't press against my chest when I walked through the door. Even the floorboards creaked differently, less like groaning, more like stretching after a long sleep. The days passed quietly, but not in the way that used to achy. This quiet was filled with motion, brushes in paint water, pages turning, the soft scratch of Sophie's pencil sketching beside me. It was a quiet that allowed breath. We had claimed this house, not just with paperwork, but with presence. Sophie's drawings covered the walls now, some taped to the refrigerator, others hung in crooked frames. She liked birds, mostly robins and owls. When I asked her why, she'd said, "Because they stay close to home even when they could leave." Every Sunday, we made pancakes shaped like hearts or flowers. The shapes were imperfect. So were we. But we were together, without apology. That morning, as I stood in the kitchen stirring tea, I looked out the window and watched the sunlight roll across the porch swing. Harold had built that swing. Sophie had repainted it pale blue last spring. The paint was already peeling in places, but I liked it that way, honest, worn. She came downstairs wrapped in his old flannel. The sleeves still swallowed her hands. She made a beeline for the porch and settled into the swing with her sketchbook. "Draw in the mint again," I asked, stepping outside with 2 mugs. She nodded. "It's growing wild." I sat beside her, the cushion warm from the morning sun. The mint patch stretched further this year, taking over half the garden. Harold would have frowned I didn't. I admired its stubbornness. "I don't pull it," I said. "It reminds me that some things, when left alone, will thrive." Sophie looked up from her page. "Like us?" I smiled. "Like us." In April, we opened the Ellis House Library. It wasn't official. Just a chalkboard sign out front, some donated books, and floor pillows arranged in a circle. But the kids came. They sat on the floor while Sophie taught them to draw. I read stories twice a week, sometimes 3 if it rained. We didn't charge. We didn't track checkouts. It wasn't about that. It was about creating a space where quiet kids felt seen. On Tuesday afternoon, Sophie came to me holding a folded sheet of paper. The corners were soft, the crease well-worn. "I've been carrying it all year," she said. "You left it on my pillow the day they left." I took the letter and opened it. "Dear Sophie," she read aloud, "there will be people who underestimate you because you don't shout. Let them." She paused. Her voice trembled on the word. "Moment." I reached across the table and touched her wrist. She smiled through it. "You always knew I needed those words," she whispered. "No," I said. "I just knew you'd carry them farther than I could." That night, I sat at Harold's desk. The air smelled like paper and dust and time. I pulled out his last letter, the one he'd written to her when she was 3. I ran my fingers along the ink, still bold after all these years. He had written, "Kindness is strength, especially when it's quiet." I placed it beside mine. 2 voices, 1 thread. I opened a fresh page and began another letter. "Dear Sophie, if someday this house is filled with your children's noise, or stands empty in quiet memory, I want you to remember this. We were not loud women, but we were never invisible." I looked around the room. The peeling swing, the mint jungle, the watercolor on the kitchen wall. Each one was a quiet rebellion. Legacy wasn't in the will. It was in the stillness we reclaimed. And it was enough. Have you ever had to reclaim your dignity without raising your voice? What would you do if someone tried to erase you in your own home? Tell us your story below. Would you fight back silently, or walk away to protect your peace? Where are you listening from? Drop your city or state. We want to know how far Maureen's journey has reached. You are not invisible, and you are never alone.